Financial freedom. Many people think of that. The question is, how do you actually achieve it? And we have an expert on the matter with us here today. Hello and welcome, Steve Lawson.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you very much. So you wrote the book about financial freedom, and of course, when it's about books, I mean, writing a book is a lot of effort, no question about that. The question is, the Wealth Highway, your roadmap to financial freedom. What was your core and main motivation to write the book?
So I've been helping people invest for years, and it seems like a lot of people complicate it. And just wanted to try and do this in a way where it was an easy to follow story. It's a conversation between a friend and I as we're driving across the country and
Hmm.
talking about financial freedom. And it introduces a lot of things that's different than what most people think about with financial planning. Most people just assume that investing means the stock market, and that is
Yeah.
a small piece. So we introduce quite a bit more.
Excellent. So it's not going to be one of these books where people say, "Oh, this is the interest and that is the regulation and this is this standard and that standard." It's going to be easier to read than that because many people fear that as soon as they open any books about financials, they say, "I started at page one, I gave up on page five."
No, this is pretty easy to follow, but the whole point is to get people to think a little bit differently about financial planning. And so a couple of the key things, one is we talk about what we call the five levels of financial freedom.
Hmm.
Everybody on earth is on one of those five levels. Figure out where you are. And again, we make it pretty easy to say, yeah, I'm on level two, I'm on level one, level four, whatever that is. And more importantly, all right, how do I take that next step? Instead of trying to figure out how do I get from where I am to complete financial freedom, that's a long journey. It
Hmm.
can be. All right, how do I just get up to that next level, to the next level? So we talk about the levels first, then we show a formula for how to kind of build a strategy, build a plan that's going to get you there. And then we get into some of the specific strategies and ideas to help you implement. And along the way, again, the two main things, one of them we emphasize is cash flow first. And that's really one of the ways that we differ from traditional investing. They say, hey, build a big pile of money. And if everything goes well, that pile will last long enough.
Yeah.
I tell people, imagine that at retirement, it's all a big pile of gold. And every time you want to do something, every time you have to pay rent, buy groceries, do anything, you have to take a gold coin off that pile and you just hope that pile lasts long enough. But
Yeah.
instead, imagine you have a goose that lays a golden egg every day. And as long as you don't spend more than what that golden egg is worth, you'll never run out of money. And that's just a different strategy to really emphasize the cash flow because that's how your bills come in.
Mm.
Rent, your car payments,
Absolutely.
your insurance, utilities, they're all monthly. You just need
Yeah.
monthly cash flow to match it. So
Yeah.
that's one of the big mental shifts that we encourage people to take, and we talk about that. And the other one is what I call true diversification. And again,
Hmm.
a lot of people think stock market. Well, I've got tech stocks and healthcare stocks and bank stocks and all these different types of stocks. The problem is the stock market tends to go down or up together. That's not diversification. And so you want assets that are going to go up even if the stock market goes down. And so we show six different markets on how you really diversify your money so you've got protection regardless of what happens in the stock market or in the economy. So that's true diversification. Those are really the two big things that I focus on in the book.
Excellent. So when you now say some people, so there are different stages people have. So this is not one of these get rich quick books then, right? So it's not about, oh, you have this magic online class and you're going to make a million overnight. It's serious about financials. What do you think when there are different stages, different levels, where do you think most people fail and why?
Um, that's a good question. I will tell you, level one is people who spend more money than they make.
The
You'll
credit card
never,
system we have in the US, there's always another credit card available to you, and it's going to solve your problem for the next couple of months.
yeah. And so really the first thing is if you're in that's emergency, the ship is going down, you better take action quick. But that's where so many people are. They're on that level where they don't know how to budget. They don't know how to spend less than they make. And so we give a simple strategy of how to overcome that. Most people are probably in level two or three, where they've got some money, they've done some investing, some savings, and they're on what I call the traditional 40-year plan that you start working, and hopefully, if you're lucky, by age 65, you have enough money.
Hmm.
So that's where most people are, probably level two, maybe level three. And it's okay, that's nice, but how do we get you to those next levels?
Mm, excellent. So often people say, well, passive income is often portrayed to people as like effortless. So it's just there and then you make money from it. In reality, how much work and discipline does it really take to build that kind of sustainable passive cash flow?
So good question. One of the things here in the U.S., the word passive gets very confusing because the IRS refers to real estate as a passive investment. For tax purposes, it's passive. If you are your own property manager and you manage that property, that is not passive. You're dealing with
Hmm.
tenants, you're dealing with screening, you're dealing with payments, you're dealing with repairs, you're dealing with turnover. That's not passive. Now, you take that same investment and you hire a property manager who can do all that for you. Okay, now that becomes a lot more passive. Maybe a few
Hmm.
minutes a month. Hey, question here. Make sure the payment came in from the property manager. That's pretty passive. And so, yeah, even with in one specific example, you can have it passive or active, really, if you want to do it all yourself, which I really discourage people from doing.
Hmm.
So that's so when you think of passive, you got to keep that in mind. Some of the things we have, they are 100% passive. You put the money in, and it does its thing. Cool. There are some that do take a little bit of time. One of the best that we utilize a lot that generates passive cash flow. It takes maybe an hour a week at most, but
Hmm.
most people they're getting $3,000 to $5,000 a month from it pretty consistently. Not a bad use of 1 hour a week.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so there's a few
Absolutely.
things like that that help accelerate. And again, it's not a get rich quick, but it is some decent income that you can then use that to invest in other things, and it kind of snowballs and it accelerates your financial independence.
Absolutely, especially as most get rich quick schemes only make one person rich, meaning the person who's selling the system to them, and the others usually end up with basically nothing. So when
Right.
now maybe there's a listener right now who thinks, I want to begin to build my wealth and get on this wealth highway. What are three practical steps that you would tell them to take within the next, let's say, 30 days?
Okay. Well, I'll start with a shameless plug. I have an organization called Unbroken Investing. That's where I help provide the education, the tools, different things like that to help people achieve that. And so that's one simple explanation would be to start with that. But aside from that, what you have to look at is what is in your portfolio, and what. So in other words, where are you now, and where do you want to go? I mean, the destination is financial freedom, but some people aren't sure where they're starting from. Okay. And so one of the things that we do, we use a simple 3-step process, just like planning a vacation. I mean, if you live in London and you want to go on vacation to Paris, okay, once you know where you're starting and where you're ending, okay, what are my options? Do I want to take a train, a plane, a
Hmm.
boat,
Yeah.
whatever. But once you have your starting point and your ending point, you just need to figure out the methodology to get there. And the same thing goes with investing. Okay, I know where I am. Now I've got a clear definition of where I'm going. Okay, what are my options to get me there? And really your main tools. Most people, one of the things I show people is I show a circle divided into 3 parts. Not super complicated. One of those 3 parts are what I refer to as traditional investing. It's things that you hope go up in value: stock market, gold, crypto, whatever it is that you're buying in the hopes that it goes up and appreciates. And the other type are people that pay a fixed interest: CDs, bonds, private lending. You're going to get a fixed rate of return. And that's all that most people think of when it comes to investing. And those are ways you can grow the wealth you already have. Okay. The other two components are ways that you can create wealth you don't have yet. One of them is in real estate. One of them is by owning a small business. Okay. And even if it's a passive business that somebody else runs for you, that still generates cash flow and wealth. And I'll share one quick example with real estate. One of the first real estate transactions I ever did, I found a guy who was wanting to sell his house. This is many years ago. I bought it for $48,000, and he agreed to let me pay him $800 a month for 5 years. Cool. I placed a tenant that was, I'm sorry, I paid him $804 a month for 5 years. The tenant paid $800 a month. And so I lost $4 a month for 5 years. But when it was done, the house was paid off. I used other people's money. I used the seller's money and the tenant's money to pay him back. And in 5 years, I sold that property for $75,000. So my
Nice.
investment, yeah, my total investment was $4 a month times 60 months, $240. And I
Yeah.
sold it for 75,000. That's creating wealth, which is different than just growing the wealth you have. And
Mm.
so I encourage you to look at ways to do that, to use leverage, to use other people's money, things like that, to create more wealth as opposed to only looking at how to increase what you have.
Excellent. When you now speak to people and they say, look, we have volatile markets, we have rising interest rates, and it all looks quite complicated. On top of that, suddenly the IRS turns up with a billion tax codes. And I just wonder, when I do anything wrong, suddenly I end up with a big tax bill, and probably I find out 5 years later I just did the wrong thing. How can people uncomplicate this whole system when they say it is just maybe for someone who has no contact with financial so far, just way too overwhelming?
I mean, one of the things I talk about is I'll give you the formula I share in the book. The book is in three parts. The first part talks about the levels. Second part talks about this formula. And the wealth you create is based on your time, your knowledge, and your money. And so you multiply those three things together. The more money you have to work with, the faster it's going to grow. The more knowledge you have, faster it's going to grow. The key is most people limit themselves to just their time, their money, and their knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
You get a team and you start using other people's money, other people's time, and most importantly, other people's knowledge, you can accelerate your wealth creation much faster. And you talk about, where that goes to your question, you're asking about taxes. Don't try and be a tax expert. That's insane. You add someone to your team who is a tax expert in investing, who knows, oh yeah, here's what you do with real estate to maximize this gain, to maximize this tax deduction, to get this tax-free. I mean, one thing is a quick example with real estate, you can refinance it and pull out your cash tax-free. Fantastic. Well, how do you get to that point? So that's a great strategy. You just got to utilize it. And so using other people's knowledge is how you're going to be most effective at putting these systems in place, taking the right strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowledge is power, as many well-known philosophers also knew before. Now, of course, we have to talk about two more questions for this interview. And one question, of course, I have to ask you. There are people who start highly motivated, and after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, where, of course, the curve is still rather flat because the big shift happens at the end. They say, come on, I just see this is not working for me. Just get the cash. I'm going to spend it on something. And then they consume it, and then it's just gone, and they will get it afterwards. How do you push past this point of where the curve really takes off? How do you psychologically work through the hard phase where people sitting in front of their numbers saying it's not moving fast enough?
So I'm going to go back to the analogy of where are you and where you want to go. During that process, you're like, okay, here's where I want to be in 5 years or 10 years. So you set that end goal of, all right, I want to be financially free in 10 years. Awesome. And then you set that in smaller pieces. Where should I be in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? And so, yeah, even in 1 year, you've made some progress. Doesn't mean you're there. And so we show people how to use basically dashboard, use checkpoints, say, okay, yeah, it hasn't moved the needle much, but this is exactly where I thought I would be after 1 year or even after 3 months. So you've got it's like a progress bar where it's like, all right, yeah, you're making progress. Yes, you're 12% of the way there, 15% of the way. You're making that progress and you're on track. And that helps people. It's that positive reinforcement that helps people realize, yeah, this is working. I got to be patient. I'm on track. But and using that approach, I find is what is very helpful.
Absolutely. And of course, one question I have to ask at the end of the interview, when people now say, hey, I think not only the book is really helpful, but I think Steve could help me. How can people get in touch with you?
Sure. I've got a website. The book is called Wealth Highway, and the website is thewealthhighway.com. So you can go on there. There's information about the book. There's information about the community that I have. You can reach out to me on there. But I encourage you to do that. Reach out to me. I enjoy talking about investing. That's all I do. That's all I've done for more than 30 years. And so I really enjoy that. And so I'd be happy to, if you want to reach out, join the community, get some of those resources, you'd be more than welcome.
Perfect. I think these are perfect final words for the podcast. Financial freedom, and Steve can help you on the way to achieve it. So at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Steve, thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Niles. Appreciate your time.